Time to install our propeller. Some people have had challenges with the, let's just turn that a little bit, with the right order to put everything together with in. So you got a thrust washer and a propeller, and then you got this washer. Oops, let's get up a little higher so you can see this washer, and then you got that washer, and a nut. And I can understand that it would be confusing if you're not super familiar with it. So let's just talk about what the propeller does for a moment. Propeller turns. Seems pretty basic, I know, but that's what it does. And while it's turning, the water is getting pushed against this surface here. And that is what's pushing the boat forward this way. So the propeller is turning that way, the water hitting this surface is pushing the boat that way. So all of the forward motion of the boat, and reverse when you're in reverse, is being pushed through these propeller blades, through your hub. Now these propellers have, this one has a rubber hub in there, and you can see that underneath the washers at the stern of it. Through that hub and through the this center hub here, and the forward thrust gets pushed through this surface here to your prop shaft here. And to do that, it needs a thrust washer, which is this bit here. It engages nice and tight and snug in there. Unfortunately, you can put it on backwards, and it will kind of sort of fit, and you can actually force it in there. But you probably, I don't even know because I never do it, probably won't be able to get the nut on. So that forward thrust is pushed against a little taper on the front of your shaft here. It does not push on your housing here. It pushes on the shaft right here on a taper. And if you look inside of the thrust washer, it's probably easier to do it on your own, but you might see it in here. There's a little taper on the inside of these splines here. Every model is a little bit different. Some of them just have a tapered surface. These ones are on the splines. So that engages on there and centers. So now when the propeller is turning, it's pushing on that washer there, which is pushing on this shaft. It's not pushing on any of this. It's pushing on that. The splines just turn the propeller in the hub. The thrust goes through this. There's a bearing at the front of this housing that takes the thrust loads. And so the front of this is getting pushed that way when the propeller is turning. So, thrust washer. I usually put a little bit of grease down there on that taper to help it seat nicely. And we always grease our splines. If you ever want to get your propeller off again, grease your splines every year. Trust me, I've seen them go 2 years and they're tight to get off. Got to grease your splines every year. They get a lot of work down there in the water, and it just, when the propeller rattling back and forth, will just squeeze all that grease out of there. So we got our thrust washer, propeller goes on. Unfortunately, you can slide it on backwards, but it will hit on the, let's just do that and show you. It's hitting on the housing here, and it's just not right. I know that because I put 100 of them on a day. When you put your prop shaft on, we'll just re-grease those splines because I wiped it all off. When you put your propeller on your shaft, you want to make sure that it's not binding and not rubbing on this surface here. It should only be touching that thrust washer. Excuse me. Now these ones are slightly different than the most of what we work on, but they have a double washer set up here that holds the the hub in place, the rubber hub in place. It's got splines on it as well, so you got to make sure that centers on the, engages on the splines and drops all the way down. And then this one goes over your spines that way, so that the hollow side down, and the nut goes against this face here, this flat face, over top of your splines. And then if you've done everything properly, a little bit more grease on the threads there. When you put your nut on, you should be able to get a cotter pin in there. As simple as that. Propellers do not have to be super tight. Like, that's plenty. Torquing down on that does not hold the propeller on any tighter because it's being pushed forward or backwards in reverse, but not very strong in reverse. They're not efficient. Cotter pin, that's what keeps your propeller on. That's what keeps the nut from coming undone. Not how tight you have it. Now you don't want to have it loose that it's rattling on there. You don't want your nut finger loose and rattling. That's no good. But it doesn't have to be super tight. And then we just bend that over. I just do the one bend on them. Let's see if we can see. Whoops. See that? One bend. And then this tang here, I'll just cut that off. The point of it is that the nut can't come off, and that's that. So I've just cut the other tang off there. So you can see that there. So bent over the top, cut the other tang off. That way it's easy to get out when it needs to come out, but that nut's not coming off of there. And that's how we install propeller.